This is Self-Directed Research. Amos and James are back with weekly hyper-focused deep dives. Make sure to like, follow, and subscribe wherever you find us to stay up to date. And as usual, visit sdr-podcast.com/episodes for all the presentations, videos, show notes, and transcripts. This episode is sponsored by Depot. Listen at the end for more information. It's Amos's turn to present this week with Automating macOS.
Hello, everyone. How you doing today?
Hi, Amos.
Hi, James.
I'm doing pretty good.
Hi, Amanda. Thanks for the thumbs up and the wave. Today we're going to talk about automating macOS. Subtitle, The Quest for Transparent DOM Element Screenshots. So as you can see, I'm chasing cheap clicks for this season. I'm shooting for something that I know everyone will be into.
Does this mean we get a Poggers face on the?
We absolutely do, James.
Excellent.
I'll get right on it. So this is a thinly veiled promotion for myself. I've been making articles and videos at the same time lately because I have two audiences. There are people who read my articles, there are people who watch me on YouTube. And so far, I've had to choose whenever there's something interesting, whether I'm going to make an article about it or a video about it. And making videos takes forever. I need to do the research anyway. And I need to visuals for the articles, usually make diagrams and everything. So it's annoying. And also, I used to write video scripts in something like Google Drive so I can share them and get feedback in line and then collaborate with other people. But I really missed just writing the way I write my articles, which is with a code editor like Zed, just write Markdown. And I made a really nice surfer for myself. You can drag and drop images directly in the browser. There's nice syntax highlighting that I've already talked about in a recent video. And there's going to be a bunch of visuals for this podcast episode. I'm sorry. I apologize for the people who think podcasts are mostly audio. They're not. You should watch.
Amos, where can they find those visuals?
They can find those visuals on sdr-podcast.com/episodes if you want to. There's a link. All right, I don't need to say /episodes all the time. But the point is, yeah, you can get the PDF, you can get the slides, or you can watch those on YouTube, where we might get ad money at some point. And you'll have those timed for you, so you won't even have to flip them. The first visual is, of course, a picture of my blog, which I redesigned a couple months ago, I think. And it's the article version of Catching Up with Async Rust, which you need to be a patron to read fully right now. But then also that particular one, it was a double feature. I released a video at the same time that I released the article, and the video is on YouTube, so it's available for everyone to watch right now. And so, yeah, for 6 months, only the article video is only for sponsors, and that's kind of my new business model, and it's been kind of working for me. But it's a lot of work to do both. Not quite twice as much.
Especially when you put so much production into both of them. I would say you have some of the cleanest videos and articles that I've seen. You're really
James,
making me feel bad. Because for me, writings are usually in a fever dream of someone poked my brain in just the right way that all the neurons lined up and I just vomit all the ideas into a blog post at once, and then I have to get it all out in one sitting, or otherwise I sit on the idea for too long. Whereas yours are like a crafted work of art.
This is completely off topic, and I have 61 slides. But yeah, it's been hard to get into a mode where I come back to older drafts and I'm able to iterate on them. Actually, all the content I'm releasing early, like in Q1 2025, are old pieces that I've been drafting throughout 2024. But due to unforeseen life stuff happening, I couldn't finish any of them. And I just had this chains of dependencies. Like, if I improve my blog to do this, then I can do that. Oh, but to talk about this, I need to talk about that. And I just had like 5 or 6 different drafts chained up to each other. I got out of the hole recently and I started releasing stuff again. And now I have a kind of a monthly schedule.
It's like the opposite of bankruptcy, where now you're just delivering everything at once.
Yes, but I'm excited to finish cleaning up my old drafts and actually write some fresh material again, because for me, it's old news. Some of those drafts are 11 months old, so I'm bored of them. But anyway, so this is the article, this is the video, and how do you do that video? If you'll notice, there's a little bit of code in the video. It's kind of on purpose. I show code in videos because it's awkward. So pay for the article. That's the whole thing. You can still pause. You can zoom in. You can I try to make it big enough, but I want it to be clean. The gray background that you see is not a gray background. It's a black piece of clothing behind me. And with the color grading, it's almost uniform, but not quite. And so the code that's on there is is composited. It's a transparent PNG. It's composited with the background. You'll notice there's no outline, there's no background around the code sample. It's not just a rectangle screenshot, which is what I used to do. So I used to just use initially the built-in macOS screenshot tool, and then CleanShot X, which is, CleanShot, please sponsor me. I will sell the frick out of your product because I love it.
Well, yeah, you already did to me. So good job.
I did. Do you like it?
I mean, yeah, I think it's nice.
Right?
You know, I can do stuff. I can record things.
So many nice little apps on Mac.
Oh.
It's like $20 a pop. So you take a rectangle and then you open it in an app like Affinity Photo, for example. Affinity sponsored. No, I don't like their product that much. They're just not subscription like Adobe. Then you just remove the background, but it's always bad. It's always bad because the text is already composited with some solid color. If it's something dark and you're putting it back on something dark, it's kind of okay. But you can see in this visual, you can choose the chroma tolerance. There's a bunch of settings you can adjust, but you're still going to have some of those darker pixels because it had a gray background. You can see some red text, and you can see the pixels on the outer edge are not just more transparent because of anti-aliasing. They're also darker and kind of gray instead of being red.
I think the industry term for these are jaggies.
Yes, jagged edges. I think so too. Another technique you can do is do it directly inside of DaVinci Resolve. DaVinci Resolve integrates Fusion, which is their After Effects competitor. They're like, what is it even called? Special Effects Suite? It's a node-based compositing solution, and it has a thing called a 3D keyer. The way it works is actually funny. I'm just now realizing because they make a color cube and then they measure the distance between the color you give it. And like you define an area within the cube that is like, I want to remove that. And then it goes, okay. And so you can select a color space. Colors are fascinating. I'm going to write about it eventually. I've tried, but the draft is like 2 hours long. And I'm like, I'm not sure about half of this. Yeah, you can do it directly in DaVinci Resolve. But then you have to do this for everything. And I back then, I didn't know you could copy Fusion compositions from one clip to the other. I didn't know about a lot of things. So it was a lot of just like waiting for the tab to open, adding a new node, dragging on the background, changing the sensitivity, dragging the despill slider up, noticing that if you do that on a screenshot of GitHub, for example, it'll make the buttons hollow. Like if you go too far with the slider, it'll start removing. So yeah, so this only really works if you take screenshots of dark backgrounds and put it back on another dark background. And even then, if you look closely, which I always do, then it's not great. I have a bunch of, well, the results are not that bad, as you can see on the slides that you can find on sdr-podcast.com/episodes. But as you can see, if you put it on a white background, there's a lot of not just jagged edges. You can see it gets darker near the edge of the letter and then goes straight to pure white background, and it's pretty bad. So this is not what we want. But eventually I discovered in my journey of just replacing everything with Apple products because I can finally afford them and then work most of the time, that in Safari, you can right-click Inspect Element, and from the DevTools, right-click an element and do Capture Screenshot. I'm not sure if Chrome offers the same thing. It probably does. Their web engines have kind of diverged, so I don't know who has what feature. But what it does is give you a clean PNG that's not composited with any background. And then I did the compositing test on this slide as well. You can see it on a white background and on a dark background. Well, it's a dark syntax highlighting scheme, so it doesn't really work on white, but there's none of those edges that we saw before. So if this weren't an auditory medium, this would be a great demonstration. Again, you should really just go on YouTube or find the slides for yourself to see the difference, because it's quite striking. But then the question is, can we automate this? Because it's neat that I found a way. What I ended up doing is that I now have a production tracker. So I have columns for everything I need to do for an article. And the first column is research and write everything, and then shoot everything, and then do a rough cut, and then collect material, visuals that I'm going to put into a video. So I have so many different columns. At the end, I have manual subtitling. I have, correcting auto subtitles done with Whisper, whatever. And now I just had a column for collecting all of those. So I would open up the article of my blog and just scroll through the page and just go through the DevTools and click Capture Screenshot one by one and put them all into a folder. That's not great, but it's still better than switching back and forth between being in timeline editing mode in DaVinci Resolve and going back to Safari to capture more things.
It's a very sit down with a beverage and a podcast kind of thing.
It
you
is.
go, okay, this is the next 20 minutes of my life is to just sit down and do this.
It absolutely is. And you can mess up, because if you accidentally select part of it, then the selection, the highlights, will be also part of the screenshot, which has happened to me many times. Or if you select slightly the wrong node, just like the parent or a child, you're going to get only one word of code, or you're going to get the whole page. Have you ever tried to import a PNG that's several 10,000s of pixel high into DaVinci Resolve? It's very unhappy.
I can imagine.
It's pissy about it too. I don't know. It shows a dialogue with the GPU error 72 or something like that. It doesn't even tell you what's wrong. It's just
Computer said no.
You done goofed.
Yeah.
You know what you did, mister. It's really bad. So can we automate this? Is the question I eventually asked myself, because I was bored. I get bored. This is my issue. This is why I couldn't get things done, is because I started doing manual work and I'm like, I hate this. This sucks. I cannot afford to pay someone to do this for me yet. And this is what saved me, because if I had paid people to do the workflow that I used to do, say 2 years ago, I would have a team of 12 people doing repetitive work. That's bad. But instead, because I couldn't afford to, I had to just make the workflow better, which is just like when you're chasing a bug and you're looking in the wrong places, you're making the rest of the code so much nicer and more auditable, more debuggable, more tested, even if the bug was not there in the first place. So I iterated a bunch on this workflow. And one of my thoughts was, can we just make a Safari extension? Surely, if you make a Safari extension, I understand that the web page itself cannot call into the devtools. That would be bad, because through the devtools, you can probably access private user data and like control part of the OS. I understand there's sandboxing going on here. But as an extension, surely you're able to, because you're able to add a whole different tab to the devtools. You can make your own devtools for something like React or whatever front-end framework. So surely there's a way to control that screenshot functionality, but I couldn't find anything. Documentation around Safari DevTools is really sparse. Maybe I searched wrong, but I searched for half an hour and I kept finding like, no, there's nothing. Good luck. My only solution so far was just right-click on a DOM node and choose capture screenshot. There is the only thing I could see in the public API, because I did eventually find the API docs, is get screenshot of visible area with a completion handler or as an async function. I don't know how Swift. I don't know how Swift works. But obviously, this actually grabs the background as well, because it's screenshot of visible area. You give it just a rectangle, and then it gives you everything that's in there. So that's not super helpful. That's not what I want. Then I thought about WebDriver. I don't know if you've ever written tests for the front end of a web application. It's not a good time, but you have tools. It used to be a super hack, just like, well, the Chrome DevTools, we kind of know what the protocol is. We've kind of reversed it or something, or it's all open source anyway. Someone's read the Chromium sources. What if we have some test suite send the same thing that the Chrome DevTools would, and it kind of simulates clicking around on the web page and typing tests and whatnot and waiting for elements to appear and click on them? I think it's still a bit of a mess. But there's a standard now, so you have a reason to be mad about it now. And the WebDriver standard includes a take element screenshot HTTP method, but again, it takes a rectangle, a region to capture, and so it does include the background. And it's not like it's a bug. It's not. I can't report this to the browser maker, right? They're just following the standard. They can't unilaterally decide to make that transparent.
And I was gonna say, for most people, that's usually what they want. Like if you're where I've seen this before is for like regression testing and things like that, where usually that's what you want in a bug report. Is you're like, I want this chunk of the thing where there's supposed to be a login element and there's not one, or it's sideways or upside down now, and I want to see the whole thing where, I don't know.
I know, I'm the weird one out.
I can't think of anything else that you would want, you know what I mean? Other than the fact that was, you happen to find in one menu, and you're like, it does exactly what I want. And almost accidentally.
This is probably the stage of the episode where people are asking, wait a minute, Amos is using this to export some code blocks, essentially. So like, I'm using Safari to render just colored text, essentially. I could do that elsewhere, right? I could write a bit of code that takes the thing, run the through tree sitter, gives me the colors and whatnot. Well,
almost, where should people send their suggestions of how they think your workflow should be?
No. But I'm also using it for diagrams. Rendering SVG is not as easy as it sounds, especially because of rich text formatting. It's actually HTML elements inside of SVG. So the short version is I'm not just doing code. I'm also doing things that I could technically do outside of browsers, but I really don't want to. And I like things looking exactly the way they look on the web. So, next option, build WebKit/Chromium yourself. The problem is...
I was going to give you credit because I said it's probably easier to figure out how to make the browser do something that you want to do than write your whole engine. Like, I totally understand. What kind of yak shaving would that be to build your whole rendering engine? I know other people in Rust who do that, but I was going to give you huge credit. Like, you got to draw the line somewhere and just drive the thing that exists. And then you drop a slide that says build WebKit or Chromium yourself.
No.
I'm going to...
You misunderstand. I mean, compile from their sources. I mean, not implement.
No, I feel like there's patches coming in that I'm about to have opinions on.
There aren't. I don't know, because I don't even know if they have the functionality. I booted up Chromium. I looked for APIs. There weren't anything automatable. So like, even if you can do it from their DevTools, I'm not interested because I'm at the same point, essentially. But yeah, building Chromium takes a long time. It's worse than building LLVM. Working on Chromium is one of the reasons that Google has a bunch of different build tools and build farms and whatnot. It's just gigantic. There's so many dependencies. I'm not sure I have enough RAM in this house to build it, honestly. And the human average age expectancy is like 80 something. So this is just not an option for me. If it was for a commercial project, maybe. But for me, I looked for something else. And then I remembered that I'm on Apple now. I'm not switching back and forth between Windows and my MacBook. Everything's on macOS, so they have a tool called Automator, which looks like this. You can find this slide. I'll stop. dr-podcast.com/episodes. It's a little app that lets you build workflows. And I recently actually built a simple workflow that I've been wanting forever. I didn't realize you could just use Automator to do that. It's a quick action, so I can right-click a PDF in the Finder and render each page as a separate PNG. That's actually something I do a lot while editing videos, because I made a video where I talk about the NSA's memory safety report, for example. It's just 7 pages. What I used to do is open it in preview, make it big enough so that the resolution is kind of okay, take screenshots and then cut everything. It's just bad. Or you can figure out what the command line is and go through several tools and blah, 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 blah. I hated that. And also preview has an export as PNG option, but it exports an animated PNG, an APNG. It does. James, you're shaking your head, but I swear to God, it does.
No, I believe you. It's a confused face. Like, oh God, why? I believe you.
I expected an option like export each page as an individual PNG, but no. However, they do have a built-in render PDF pages as images hidden in Automator, which everyone keeps forgetting about. Even on Apple forums, they're like, oh, right, that's the thing. Forgot. So Automator is fun. You, the listener, may not have heard of Automator before, but you may have heard of shortcuts, which Apple teaches you about every major version of iOS. So this is that, but for macOS, pretty much. And you can record something. So you can hit the record button, then do something on your computer, and then play it back, and it'll do the thing. But that doesn't work for me really, because for me, it's opening the DevTools and then scrolling through each element that matches the selector. Like I don't know exactly what it records. Like, is it going through the element hierarchy? Is it based on screen position? It just doesn't work for me. Enter AppleScript. Yay! So initially, like, what motivated me to actually make that slide deck, make that presentation here, was that AppleScript is freaking weird. So we're going to talk about AppleScript for a hot minute. It's a language, a natural language developed by Apple that first appeared 32 years ago. I'm older than AppleScript, but not by much. I was born in 1990. It first appeared in 1993. Typing discipline is weak. I'm reading from the Wikipedia info box. Typing discipline is weak, of course. It appeared in System 7, apparently. I have never, in my life, run System 7. I've never run macOS 8. I've seen screenshots of macOS 9. I'm pretty sure it ran in my browser or something. No, yeah. And it is extremely weird. Let's go through some of the things. AppleScript was released in October 1993 as part of System 7.1.1, the first major upgrade to System 7. Quark Express, I don't know if, James, you recognize that product name?
It rings a bell.
It's a layout thing. When you make a magazine, you need to do the layout of the thing. You would use that.
Should ask Amanda, although like, if it's a journalism thing, maybe, but it was a very long ago. I don't think you were doing journalism in 93, Amanda.
I definitely was not. And so I got
sure
panicked for a second. I was
relevant.
like, journalism? That is me. Wait. Oh, no. Not yet.
Quark Express was one of the first major software applications that supported AppleScript. This in turn led to AppleScript being widely adopted within the publishing and pre-press world, often tying together complex workflows. This was a key factor in retaining the Macintosh's dominant position in publishing and pre-press, even after Quark Express and other publishing applications were ported to Microsoft Windows. And I had no idea. I remember wondering as a kid, why do people buy Macs? Because they're so expensive. And now I have like two decent reasons at least. There's more. But one thing I love is you just click the help menu and you start typing something out. And it tells you every menu item that exists in the application. That's pretty good. I used to complain that there's a global menu, essentially, depending on which application's focused, the global menu bar at the top changes. But I think it's great now because you can just discover functionality. In DaVinci Resolve, all the time, I'm clicking the element and going to help and be like, is there a thing to do this? And it's either showing you the menu item or directing you to the help page. So yeah, AppleScript lets you tell applications to do things. And apparently that was enough for the publishing and pre-press industry. And instead of writing code to do their thing, they wrote this weird natural scripting language to press buttons and move files around. I don't know if you've ever seen the AppleScript editor before, but it looks like this. So James, can you describe what you're seeing on screen right now?
Tell application Safari activate and tell. Oh man, this is from a time.
It is.
System event Safari, Jojo. So you go to Safari, go to the JavaScript console.
Well, what stands out the most? Can you see a difference between the first block and the second block?
One's purple?
Exactly. One's purple and monospace. As it turns out, I have a slide about this. The purple text is uncompiled. It's using Menlo Regular, which is a monospace font. Everything's on size 12. And the other things are Verdana. So actually the compiled code is sans serif, but it's not monospaced. They're not kidding around with the natural language thing. They're like, no, it's just a document with some colors and italics. Don't worry about it. It's not programming. It's easy. It says like set split group to first UI element of target window whose role description is split group. It's not programming. It's just English. It's fine. You can do this.
This is like, and this is of that era of like HyperCard, and there's all those other ones where it was the people who took the right amount of drugs were programmers at that point, where they're like, everything is, everything was sort of modeled as like, okay, we want interactive programs and people aren't going to write programs and run them. It's going to be an interactive conversation with your computer. And like there was this whole genre of...
Yeah, it was low code before low code, yeah.
Yeah, and like Oberon and all of those kind of things came out of this same kind of era, and then it just kind of lost to like most regular compile your application and run it and those like traditional scripting type things. But there's this whole 90s genre of, especially on Macs, where there was just this software that was like, people are going to write human language and it's going to work. And we should make sure that everything you can do with the GUI can be automated through this kind of thing.
I'm going to stop you because you're going to go through my entire slide deck just talking about how excited you are. I know nothing about HyperCard, by the way, but I think it's one of the ancestors of AppleScript or like the whole automator
it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. So you write code and it shows up at monospace purple, and then you hit save. And if you didn't make any mistakes, it highlights it. This is just, what's the format named? I want to say PDF, but that's not it. RTF. This is just RTF. You can copy and paste it into Safari and you'll get the colors. I know because this is how I made the next slides. So how do you write AppleScript? You tell applications to do things. In this case, you can tell application Safari to activate. What is activating an application? It's bringing its windows to the front, essentially, and like having the top menu bar. It's focusing it, basically. But focusing is different because it's for Windows. So in my case, first I want to activate Safari. And also everything you can do with an application is actually, there's metadata for that. There's a definitions for that are in the app bundle, because in case you didn't know, on macOS .app, Safari.app, for example, are folders. Their app bundles are folders. So you can just go in there and look at what they have. And in the contents/resources/safari.sdef file, it's just an XML file that lists everything you can do. So if, for example, they've bound that to other languages and you can generate types and methods and whatnot and definitions for everything you can do with any applications from those XML files, which is absolutely great. So one thing you can do is you can click menus. For example, I have here tell application system events. This is how you do synthetic inputs, keyboard and mouse. Tell application process Safari, click menu item, quote, show JavaScript console, of menu, quote, develop, of menu bar 1. So there's a lot of menu bar 1, menu bar 37. It gets complicated. We'll get into it quickly. But this is how it works. I don't know what happens if you switch the system language and then suddenly it's montrer la console de développement JavaScript instead of show JavaScript console. I don't know what happens.
You have to try this now.
I will not. It's left as an exercise to the hearer, listener.
Maybe somebody else will try it.
please report back as a YouTube comments. We need the engagement. So what else can you do? You can send keystrokes. There's a keystroke command, which in this case, I'm using to type JavaScript code into the devtools. How very meta. I'm using one scripting language to type another scripting language into a devtool of a browser. You can do key code to simulate a key press that isn't a string. So keystroke is for strings for typing text. Key code 36, for example, is enter. And then you can wait, because welcome to GUI automation. You will wait. You will do some things and try to estimate how soon after that it is safe to do the next thing. And if you're lucky, you can actually query the state of the GUI and like wait for something to pop up or something. But there's a lot of looping and waiting for something to pop up. And if it doesn't, try the action again and undo and whatever. There's a lot of cleanup code. There's going to be a link to the code I ended up with, and it's very defensive. And the thing that makes all this possible is accessibility. I have a slide that says A11Y. If that's the first time you see it, it's just accessibility. It's A11 letters and then Y. Just like we have I18N for internationalization and L10N for localization, which are different things. All of this is possible because, I don't know which caused which. They both benefit from every user interface element being part of a tree that you can query. There are accessibility APIs where you can list what's going on with an application. So what we have here is on this slide is the accessibility inspector that's built into macOS. And you have this little crosshair button that you can click, and then you can point at any UI element anywhere, and it's going to tell you exactly where it is in the UI hierarchy.
Yeah, I've definitely seen similar things for like Selenium tests, where working with some people who are doing front-end testing, but also accessibility things at companies I've worked at, where they said, usually if you're doing the right things for accessibility, it also makes automation and testing much easier, because there's already anchors and metadata and stuff for all the things you would need for this WebDriver testing as well.
Yes, everything has to have labels and roles and some description that can be used by a screen reader. There's a button on that accessibility inspector thing that is the play button, and this reads what VoiceOver, the macOS screen reader built in, would read if that element were active. And then there's also little arrows, which is what happens when you navigate to the next or the previous element. And similarly, there's actions. So for a button, there's the press action. For a window, there's a raise or lower. Everything that you can do as without a visual pointing device or something like that, without actually looking at the screen, you can control all of this by just listening and saying yes, no, maybe, click, whatever. And so actually what we can see in the Accessibility Inspector, you're missing if you're not looking at the slides, where you can see the whole hierarchy starting from Safari, which is an application, and then catching up with async Rust, the standard window, and then split group, tab group, scroll area, HTML content, console, tab panel, log, group, and then finally text. And it's 10. It's the result of evaluating lms.length.
Are you using Safari because it works the best with AppleScript, or does this work? I assume probably everything works mostly the same in Firefox or Chrome as well?
I would hope so. Okay. I didn't check. I think all browsers should be pretty good with that, at least on Mac. I know the situation is complicated on Linux, but at least on Mac and Windows, I would assume that all browsers expose the DOM as this accessibility hierarchy as well, because you need to be able to navigate what's in the web page, right, using the built-in OS screen reader. So I haven't checked. I'm using Safari because, and I'm ashamed to admit that Safari is actually my primary browser, James. I
Nothing wrong with that, especially if you like battery life.
But like coming out. Y'all have something to say. I'm using Safari. I don't know. I don't like Chrome anymore. Chrome was cool when it came out. I'm gonna move on. So you have that whole hierarchy that you see in the Accessibility Inspector, and then you can turn it into AppleScript with great efforts, and in my case, the help of one LLM. So you would set target window to first window, set split group to first UI element of target window whose role description is split group, and then you keep going. You go down the hierarchy like that, hoping that it is actually the first UI element whose role description is split group. Or if you have multiple split groups, then you need to count them or you need to filter them by something else. And there's only so many fields you can filter by. Role description is a good one, but some just don't have a lot. There's 2 groups. I don't know what those groups are for. It's just, it's kind of fragile. If Safari releases a major update, I will most likely have to update my scripts. And then finally, at the end, we have log value of text element as integer. And then you can see that in the script editor is kind of an IDE. So when you hit save, it compiles. We've seen it formats the code. And then also it shows messages as you run the scripts. And this is kind of not great to go from that accessibility inspector to writing that code by hand. And there used to be a better way. It was called UI Browser. It was a third-party application made by Bill Cheeseman, which, yeah, Bill Cheeseman, kind of famous independent macOS developer. He did a bunch of apps. And he made an app called UI Browser. It kind of overlaps with the accessibility inspector. You can inspect elements. You see the whole hierarchy. It's displayed in a slightly different format. But then there's a button where you can just generate AppleScript from the thing that you pointed to. So in this case, it's get value of static text, blah, blah, blah. But you can see of group 24 of group 1. See, you still have to tune it a bit.
Yeah. On that last slide, that's very Smalltalk. Like there's the Smalltalk graphical browser. Like this is another one of those ones of the same contemporary era of that, where all of your functions would be compiled objects and you get this browser of all of your functions. So if you wanted to call functions, you could browse through it almost like a docs.rs, but you could click on it and like drag it into your program and stuff like that. So it's
everything was inspectable.
It smells very much of that age.
It does. Unfortunately, UI Browser version 3 was end of life on October 17, 2022. So I missed the boat. You cannot buy it anymore. That's why my screenshot says free trial, because I don't have a license. I have the statement here. The current release will not be updated. The website will be closed. It will no longer be possible to download or purchase UI Browser, and product support will no longer be available. UI Browser has been a labor of love for me. It's sole developer for almost 20 years. Now that I'm 79 years old, it is time to bring this good work to a conclusion. Bill Cheeseman. It's hard to be mad at Bill, honestly. 79, okay, you get to retire. Fine. From open source mainnet. Oh, it was not even open source, actually. Well, okay, so there's UI Browser 4.
That means he was 60 when he started making it.
That's correct.
And then retired at 79.
You know what? It's never too late.
Nope.
If you think you're too old, no, you're not. Except Bill. No. Bill gets to retire. You don't. As he retired, stopped working on UI Browser 3, he also released a partially complete port of UI Browser to Swift from Objective-C, I imagine, called UI Browser 4. And I actually compiled it and tested it. It's not functional. It's missing pretty important things. And from the date it was open sourced, I haven't seen any major activity on forks or whatever. So I don't know what people are doing now. Actually, I do. That's a lie. Actually, what they're doing is they're just pirating the UI Browser 3 because it still kind of works. So there's a file in library logs that's called K6 whatever that has the rot 13 version of your full name in an XML dictionary, and you can just essentially remove that file, and it's like you never started the trial again. And that's what the forums say to do, because what are you going to do? You cannot buy the software anymore. The newer version doesn't work because there's no support anyway. So it's not like they're missing out on sales. They're not willing to sell it anymore. So people have turned to piracy, or just don't care about accessibility anymore. But UI Browser 3 works on Sequoia 15.2, but it is still crashy. So yeah, a bunch of slides showing UI Browser 4. It looks nicer, but most of the buttons don't do anything. It is at this point in my journey that I discovered that actually some things are exposed in Safari DevTools. There is, for example, a screenshot method that I didn't know about. Because I hit a problem in my automation. You still need to somehow scroll through the DOM and right-click on the node and select the menu item that says capture screenshot. But actually, no, you don't have to do that. You can just type screenshot and pass a reference to a DOM element right there in the DevTools console. It gives an image with a checkerboard background, so you know it's transparent, which is great. But then you still have to right-click it and save it as an image. But at least it's predictable. You can now write some JavaScript that is going to go. What are we looking at?
You can write some AppleScript that writes some JavaScript.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. You write. Well, so what I ended up doing is the JavaScript part I just have as part of the JavaScript sources for my website, so that I get TypeScript and all the nice things. And also just because it's slow to have AppleScript emit keyboard events to enter one by one, character by character JavaScript code in your DevTools. It's just slow. So it is part of my bundle, and the AppleScript just calls a function and sets some globals essentially, and then we just iterate through every element that has to be screenshot. And this is the AppleScript that ends up doing it. You can see a bunch of syntax, like string concatenation is using the ampersand operator, for example. The most striking thing for me is that there's parentheses are only used for precedence or grouping or priority of, for example, there's set last log item to last UI element of blah, blah, and then there's parentheses. These actually don't do anything as far as I can tell. But it's supposed to read as a sentence. It's like last UI element of log element, whose role description is. Whose role description? Role description is in 2 words. There's space between them, but it's the same color. You can see it's just the name of a property that just happens to have a space in there. This is not the final version of the code. It performs action AX show menu to trigger the context menu, then adds a little delay, and then does the down arrow key code and then enter. I found a better way after finishing that slide deck. But it's a lot of that. It's just like, if you can find that menu and click save image, then it shows up at dialog and it's already focused on the file name. So you can just type the file name and press enter and hope that everything works. It took me forever to debug this. Okay, I spend an entire day of running it and it goes through 75 images and then it breaks because like it got in some weird state. Something took a little longer than it usually does. I had to do a lot more accessibility inspection just to make sure that the UI state is what I think it is. A lot of looping and delaying, retrying. And then after all of that, I figured out that I never needed to write AppleScript in the first place because there's a thing called JXA, which is JavaScript for automation. Because of course, there's not just AppleScript, right? There's also JavaScript. There's also Perl, Python, Ruby, and Tickle from Tickle TK.
Yeah.
I'm quoting from Wikipedia here. The Macintosh versions of Perl, Python, Ruby, and Tickle all support native means of working with Apple events without being OSA components. Also, JXA, so JavaScript for automation, also provides an Objective-C and C language foreign language interface. James, do you realize what that means?
You're going to write Rust that FFIs into JXA?
No, but that means you can write an entire Apple native macOS application in AppleScript, and people have, and they've sold them. You can write the entire thing because you can call outs to any Mac API from AppleScript because there's this Objective-C bridge.
Are they all like automator tools and things like that?
No, just a regular app. Because you can turn AppleScript scripts into app and you can call any macOS API from it. So, because Objective-C is closer to a scripting language than C, let's say. They already had this concept of objects and sending messages and being able to do reflection and iterating on properties and whatever. So you can do that from AppleScript as well. So they just made a bridge. Isn't that something?
So when we publish this, what would you be most excited by? Like someone from the Safari team who tells you exactly how to do this out of the box? Someone who's like the last person maintaining AppleScript inside of Apple, or Bill Cheeseman?
Oh, I would love an autograph from Bill. I don't know if he's still around, but Bill, if you're out there, hit me up.
Let's not jinx it.
We can chat. Well, the reason I had this slide is that you would think that JX is this old deprecated thing. Just like on Microsoft, you still have JScript, which is not exactly JavaScript.
Okay.
I don't know if you've ever, sometimes you see, when you run old-ish applications, you see dialogues pop up and it's a script error, but that's because it's an old, weird version of JavaScript being run by a very old, outdated engine built into Windows that they ship because they have to. Backward compatibility.
I think I've heard of that, but
yeah.
I've never had to debug that before. So
I assume JXA was like this because AppleScript seems somewhat maintained. I think essentially they have to because, again, the freaking pre-press and publishing industry is reliant on it. It's a selling point of Macs. They can never retire it now. It's too late. But I thought JXA was just like, oh, they tried it in OS X Yosemite, didn't really take off because it's annoying. You lose a lot of the niceties. We're gonna get into that of writing AppleScript. There's no IDE integration or anything. You can write JavaScript, you get access to the same thing, but you're completely on your own. But it is giving you the latest JavaScript feature set, but that Safari has. So you can run exactly the same code that you can run in Safari, which is actually great. So you get to do modern JavaScript. This is an example of part of the script written as JavaScript. You can see I tried to get some typing. There are some TypeScript types for the JavaScript.
I was going to say those look like TypeScript. Yeah.
Yeah. You can see there's a shebang up top to run it using OSA script, which is the command line interface. Because I've shown the script editor, which is a GUI, but you can also just have a plain text file somewhere and then pass it to OSA script and it still works. It just compiles on demand, I guess. Because when you save from the script editor, it saves the compiled version alongside with the sources. But the point is when you execute it, it's faster. It doesn't have to recompile it every time you execute it.
It's like, what are they, Python, PyO files, that kind of thing? Like the first time you run it, it compiles it and then it holds on to it so you don't have to compile it again the second time you run it?
Something like that. Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, but 30 years before, I guess.
I'm assuming compiling AppleScript made a huge difference back when computers were a lot slower. And so you can see the difference. You're looking at this JavaScript, you can see we're doing essentially the same thing, clicking on a menu. You're just accessing properties. What's aggravating is that you cannot actually enumerate properties like you would on regular JavaScript objects because these are not JavaScript objects that exist, right? They're just proxies for something that exists. You can't go through all properties. You have to know what properties are named, and you have to try accessing something, and then it just throws if it doesn't exist. So you have a bunch of try-catch blocks. But you have all the same stuff like keystroke, keycode, delay, clicking on menus. You're just indexing into things instead of saying item 0 or item 1. Oh yeah, because AppleScript is 1-based, also 1-based indexing, but in JavaScript it's 0-based, because of course. And you don't get devtools at all if you use JXA. It just says error -1728 cannot get object. It doesn't even tell you the line. I was not expecting a full backtrace. I'm not greedy. I just wanted to the line of the script that actually barfed.
Just a crumb of context, please.
It does not. Even if you run it directly from the script editor, which you can actually open JavaScript in the script editor. It doesn't work. It doesn't tell you anything. My last couple of slides are just funny cursed things that people are doing. Some people are running OSA script from JXA to run AppleScript, because there are some things that AppleScript can do but JXA cannot do. So if you're writing JXA, you can tell system events to do shell script, OSA script, AppleScript, something. Basically, I don't know. It's apparently impossible in JXA to get the front window of the frontmost application. You can list the window, you can iterate through all the windows of the application, but you don't know which one is front. So you can run OSA script as an external process to run some AppleScript and evaluate to something and read it back into it. It's a terrible hack. This is a Stack Overflow answer that has 0 upvotes, as it should. Oh, this is the thing I was talking about. It's AppleScript Obj-C. It's a Cocoa development software framework called AppleScript /Objective-C, or ASOC. It's part of the Xcode package since macOS X, macOS 10, Snow Leopard. And it allows AppleScript to use Cocoa classes and methods directly. So yeah, you can make an entire app just with AppleScript. Should you? I don't think so, but you can. This is a comment on some forum that I found very soothing as I spent the entire day debugging my automation. Someone says, I started programming in 1962 and since then have written in about 15 languages. But this GUI scripting is the most vexing I've ever encountered. So I don't think this is the actual Tim Burton. That's just a pseudonym. But my heart goes out to you. You can also send me an autograph if you're listening to this. Anyway, I got it working. I'm going to have a link to my code just so you can see what it looks like. Because it's really weird. I just never heard of it before. I forgot automation was a thing. The accessibility thing is super powerful, and I'm excited that so much of macOS is accessible. I haven't tried the full screen reader experience yet, like actually trying to get things done just like with my eyes completely closed or something. But it gives me hope. I hope to get more into that because I've been meaning to get into accessibility stuff for a long time, and so this was kind of a soft intro for me for something that actually saves me a lot of time. So I got it working. It captured all the images, and then of course I noticed some typos and some diagrams, so I had to manually grab a bunch again. But it was super helpful. So yay.
I was gonna say, have you improved the accessibility of your website now to make it easier for your own scripting and automation purposes?
No, I think the accessibility of my website is not terrible. I've gotten some because I have some readers who are using screen readers, so they give me feedback sometimes when I change a component. I had this part switcher for series that was not accessible, so I changed it. I added titles and descriptions and whatnot. When you prototype a website, you use the default browser controls for a bunch of things like buttons and drop-downs and whatnot. And then if you replace that with React components, they might not be accessible. There are some components like the whole React ARIA component suite is designed to be accessible from the ground up. But if you're just throwing something together quickly, it's really easy to lose track of things that matter to non-sighted or low-sighted users.
Very cool. It speaks to AppleScript. It strikes me as one of those tools that they've tried to kill for 20 years now, and like none of the successors have reached the power of the original one. Of like, it was just the right amount of imperfect but useful that it still has existed since 93 or whatever.
It's hard for me to hate on it because it lowered the bar, which means more people get to do stuff, and that's beautiful. I think that's a great note to end on.
Podcast.
Fucking, yeah. I'm so sorry. I keep trying. I will just do fewer slides. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
I also have not hit the download button once during this whole recording, but I did now, so we're good.
This episode is sponsored by Depot, the build acceleration platform that's on a mission to make all builds near instant. If you're tired of watching your builds in GitHub Actions crawl like the modern-day equivalent of paint drying, give Depot's GitHub Action Runners a try. They're up to 10 times faster with unlimited concurrency, faster caching, support for Linux, macOS, and Windows, and they plug right into other Depot optimizations like accelerated container image builds and remote caching for Bazel, Turbo Repo, Gradle, and more. Depot was built by developers who are tired of wasting time waiting on builds instead of shipping. It's made for teams that want to move faster and stay focused on what actually matters. That's why companies like PostHog use Depot to cut build times from over 3 hours to just 3 minutes, saving tens of thousands of build hours every week. Start your free 7-day trial at depot.dev and let them know we sent you.